Okay, we'll get started. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. I am Luke Waltzer. I am Director of the Teaching and Learning Center at the CUNY Graduate Center, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Laurie Hurson, Şule Aksoy, and Zach Muhlbauer. And together we are working on the Critical AI Literacy Institute, which is a project that is funded by google.org. It's a 3-year faculty development project that we've initiated this semester. We're just at the beginning stages. And it takes on a challenge that an attention that I noted in the opening remarks from the presidents this morning. President Delgado was talking about generative AI very much as a normal technology, right? This is another in a series of tools that, or sets of tools that has emerged over the past 30 to 40 years that universities and knowledge makers and scholars have had to adapt to in different ways, right? And that there needs to be conversation, dialogue, research, and discovery around these tools in order to make sure that they are properly located within the teaching and learning and research enterprise of the university. President Salgado kind of built upon these remarks, but used language that suggested that maybe AI is more than that, that it's revolutionary, right? And that it's going to be harder to reckon with potentially than what President Delgado suggested. And that's maybe a subtle tension. I don't think they're really in disagreement, but there's a vocabulary there that represents something that I'm sure we've all seen in navigating generative AI's impact on our campuses over the past 3 years, that people are all over the place trying to get their head around its impact, its meaning, our argument at the heart of this project is that CUNY needs to have more of a community around critical inquiry around generative AI. And critical inquiry means more than thinking about using it ethically, more than thinking about using it responsibly, right? Those are important. Those are core components of a critical, skeptical approach to generative AI. But they may not be sufficient for coming to grips with the impact that this technology is having on students and on knowledge-making practices. But we don't know that yet, right? Because the technology is emerging so fast, and there's so much kind of development and rhetoric around it, right? So we're starting from a principle that a critical foundation requires attending to generative AI's material reality, right? This technology is not magic, right? It's trained on data sets which have collected intellectual property and intellectual production, text and images that were initially generated by humans, right? So there's a material basis for this technology. It runs on servers, right, that demand energy, right, and that waste water or make use of water, right? So there is a material basis to the way that we use this technology that frankly is obscured through the chatbot interface or through most of the interfaces that we integrate with. So we want to bring that into the conversation around generative AI. There's also labor implications to generative AI. Right? It's changing the way we work. Some people feel it's threatening jobs. Some people think that it may be extending what's possible in jobs. And we don't really know what the long-term or even medium-term impact will be, right? And there's also a rhetorical criticality that's necessary. What is the language that is being used around generative AI, right? The notion of how many people have heard of hallucinations? Everyone's heard of a hallucination, right? Well, hallucination is telling us a hallucination is a fundamentally human act, right? So what does it mean that we're now talking about this technology in human terms, right? There's all sorts of language that's anthropomorphizing the technology, that's making us think it may be more human than it is. So how do we build sensitivity to that process among our faculty, among our students, and within and across our curricula? That is the approach and the set of questions that is guiding the inquiry of the Critical AI Literacy Institute, which is a 3-year grant that mixes faculty development research and evaluation, and R&D, tinkering, thinking about how we can build tools that allow us to know more about them. So very quickly, we're in year one right now. We have about 21 faculty members who have started working together. They're from 14 different campuses and maybe 12 different disciplines or so. Şule will say more precisely, who have already come together for one online meeting. We've got another online meeting in 2 weeks, and then we'll get together for an intensive summer institute where they will design interventions into their courses, either teaching with or about generative AI in ways that grapple with the epistemological foundations of their fields. What does it mean to do sociology when students have this technology in their pocket? What does it mean to do digital design or computer science or to teach writing? And the answers are different, right? Connected, but different across those fields. In year two, we'll recruit additional faculty members who will build upon the work that the first cohort has done and maybe extend it to disciplines we didn't engage with in the first phase, or maybe build upon the disciplines that we've already engaged with. And the research apparatus that you'll hear about will help us create data that informs the thinking that faculty members do, and then we iterate again. This work builds upon the Building Bridges to Knowledge project that our colleague and friend Mari Watanabe-Rose ran out of CUNY Central for the past year, which has generated all sorts of models and modules for teaching with and about generative AI. But our goal is to build and to connect a community of folks who have a critical vocabulary that really will ultimately help the CUNY think about AI as normal technology, as technology that isn't necessarily going to change everything, but that is going to be present and that we have to reckon with. To say more about what the curriculum will look like, I'll hand it off to Laurie Hurson.
Hi, everyone. How are you today? I'm Laurie Hurson. I'm the Assistant Director of Open Education with these folks in the Graduate Center TLC. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we've been doing so far this year and what is going on in our year one curriculum. So in the spring, last fall, we accepted faculty, our 21 faculty who are now our Cali faculty fellows, and we were doing intensive reading. The four of us are in a very active Slack chat, sharing readings, developing a reading list, and doing just really deep exploration of what is going on in the world of AI. I know you see it too. Every day there's a new article or a new criticism, so we're trying to read it all and catalog it. And we actually have a link later to a Zotero library of over 300 resources that we've been reading and collecting to try and develop our critical, kind of deeply thoughtful stance on how we're going to integrate AI and work with these faculty to develop modules. So we were reading a lot in the fall. We accepted faculty, and then we're running several spring meetings, and I'll actually take you through the curriculum for one of those spring meetings. We held a meeting on April 4th. We have another one coming up on May 16th, and these meetings are just to get on the same page with faculty, to share our readings, to start asking questions about AI and thinking about all of those labor, equity, political, economic implications of what these tools are doing in our world. In the summer, we're going to come together for a 3-day intensive institute where we are in person with faculty. And the goal of that summer institute is for faculty to leave with a starting to be developed module that they will teach in the fall. And over the rest of the summer, we will spin up affinity groups. We'll meet with faculty while they develop that module that they will then teach in the fall. And they'll teach this module in their courses. We're going to collect data from them and from their students on how they think it's going and how it's changing their relationship, their thinking, their trust of these AI tools. And then in the winter, we'll do data analysis, we'll refine it, we'll share those modules that were developed openly with all of you so you can see what has emerged. But I mentioned that spring meeting, and I mentioned all of our readings and all of our questions. From all of the things that we read in the fall, we distilled it to 3 readings that we asked faculty to engage with before an online Zoom meeting on April 4th. And those readings are listed here. One was pedagogically focused, thinking about how we can prompt AI tools to do different things, which I know some of you are interested in. One was about how do we think about who has rights, who is responsible when using AI and developing and teaching with these tools. And then the last one was about equity issues, who benefits and who's excluded when we bring these tools into our teaching and into our classrooms. And from these readings, we developed a very long list of questions. And I'm going to be quiet and let you read one of those questions. We had 4 breakout rooms on Zoom about disciplinary knowledge, critical considerations, agency, and pedagogies. And we had a collaborative writing document for each room. Hi, come on in. So in each breakout room, we asked faculty to reflect on the 2 questions that were about disciplinary knowledge or about agency. So we have faculty's reflective writing, our own reflective writing, that's giving us an idea about how are we thinking about AI. This is our criticality. How are we going to critically consider, ask questions about these tools, and develop our own language and approach to using them in our classrooms. And the reflective writing that came from these collaborative documents are actually our first data point in the big research project that we are developing as we move through this grant project. And I actually am going to leave it there and pass it to my colleague Şule, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the research project and some preliminary findings.
You're on time. Thank you. So we developed this research framework in collaboration with the Center for Advanced. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So a little bit about research design. So we work closely with the Center for Advanced Study in Education, and we developed this framework collaboratively and recognizing that faculty in this project is our essential partners. So we center their experiences in the research design. So you see these 4 components here. The first one is more about program evaluation, and we will examine how participants, how our faculty are developing, designing, testing, and iterating this process throughout these 3 years. And then we also are interested in assessing changes in faculty practices and approaches to Gen AI and how they are using it in their classrooms. And then there is also classroom observation and the classroom implementation part of this research design. So we will also look at students' experiences and how they are interacting with generative AI in their disciplines. And a little bit about context. So Luke briefly mentioned about the context. So each project at the Teaching and Learning Center, we want to bring diverse voices across CUNY campuses. So there are 14 campuses represented, and 1/3 of those campuses are community colleges. And there are 3 disciplinary clusters and 17, I counted 17 different disciplines that are represented in our group from sciences, social sciences, and humanities departments. And there is also a diverse group in terms of faculty rank. So we see faculty as change agents, so they can go back to their departments and also campuses to explain, to share what we've been doing in this project. That's why we also have a very diverse group in terms of faculty title. And almost half of them are early career scholars. And a little bit about preliminary observations. So this slideshow doesn't do justice, but even with just 1 meeting, we had a lot of data to work with. And those are coming from free write exercises that Laurie shared, exit ticket, and also the surveys. And those surveys and free write exercises will be repeated in the future meetings and workshops too. So what we did, 4 of us, we reread these documents, like very long documents, and coded and compared our notes. And we realized that our 4 categories that Laurie shared and also Luke talked about, those like 3 elements in the beginning in terms of how we define criticality in this project, they emerged in faculty writings and reflections as well. So those categories are epistemological questions, pedagogical implications of generative AI, agency, faculty agency, criticality, and equity. So you see some themes emerged. I try to summarize them here on the right on your right-hand side. So there is greater emphasis on change in pedagogy in terms of added labor. So faculty talked a lot about how much time they have to spend designing learning experiences for their students, because students are using these. But they also share that their goal in their disciplines are promoting critical thinking, but students are using these tools to cognitively offload some tasks. So they were grappling with how they can like interact with these tools and also design learning experiences for the students. So there is also the question of epistemology comes up, because they are concerned about the authorship and originality. One of the faculty talked about how they missed student like idiosyncrasies in students' writings. So that was a major concern as well. And there is also this tension that we realized in terms of the AI inevitability and like resisting AI hype. So faculty are concerned about how these rhetoric around tech determinism and how this like epistemic authority that generative AI tools are posing creates a threat to their agency and also students' experiences as well. So, and there is also like this is like multidimensional, this tension. There is also questions about equity as well. So faculty is concerned about how like CUNY students are kind of in a disadvantage, or there is like an asymmetry compared to other institutions that are well funded. So there is a question about equity there too, and I think CUNY context tells a lot about that. And in terms of tech determinism, we also see that faculty are concerned about how these models are trained, and there are questions about this, like the infrastructure and how they can teach about these to their students and also themselves learn about them. But I will stop here because Zach will talk more about the infrastructure and how that informs the tinkering process too. So I'll stop. Oops, no, okay.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Zach Muhlbauer, and I've been working on the research and development arm of the Critical AI Literacy Institute. And part of that is really a process of trying to uncover some of the technical layers of AI infrastructure in a way that we can distill into critical values that inform our curricular and pedagogical approach to AI within the university. So as part of that, I pose the question, what does it mean to build software critically with large language models? Is that something that's possible apart from the ethical and institutional labor considerations of the technology itself? And I consider this beyond the question of vibe coding. How many people in the room have heard of this idea of vibe coding? Raise your hand. And effectively, this is a kind of using code generating LLMs with the expectation that you're going to go on vibes rather than an understanding of the underlying software infrastructure that informs and forecloses on potential opportunities and realities in the way that we engage with these technologies. You'll see this on Instagram and other social media platforms, and it's gained a little cultural currency. And I think as part of the tinkering arm of the Cali Institute, we're trying to push back on this uncritical approach to code generating LLMs that risk not only disrupting the work of software engineers and programmers, but also present a number of critical concerns for the work that we do within the university. So every tweak in that respect is a test. So when you're building with generative AI or you're building with a large language model, it is only a single dimension of the broader stack. And that's another way of saying that it doesn't encompass the entire development process. It's the work that I've been doing is trying to find a way to situate it within existing university infrastructure rather than completely upending what the university is meant to do for the sake of a technology that has been released in a way that enables students to cognitively offload their learning and their building. And so this is very much building as a heuristic practice of trying to pursue certain technical insights that, again, inform the criticality that we bring to the Institute. And as part of that, and there is a QR code here at the bottom, And this is one use case of a web application that I've been prototyping in an effort to kind of domesticate the underlying technology in a way that can bring it to students and to classroom applications, not only to provide answers, but also to pose critical questions that that students can reflect upon in their learning. So. And this is the Jeopardy board, probably a familiar sight, but this is actually an AI-generated Jeopardy board. It was built from the ground up with Claude Code and Klein, which are two coding agents. Klein actually uses Claude Code. I won't go too much into the development process because I want to focus on the educational technology implications here. So as you can see in the top left corner, there's an AI settings and generate option. The board is editable. You can include multiple players. So if you include groups in your classrooms, that can be one way of applying this. Final Jeopardy is an outstanding feature. I'll get back to you on that in a little bit. And so I want to show you some of the back end of the Jeopardy LM custom AI settings. And some of these terms may be unfamiliar to you. And I would just encourage you to kind of stick with it and keep learning. The provider and key, for instance, I know that ChatGPT is a popular kind of homage, a term that's often used here. So OpenAI is the AI provider, and they not only provide a chatbot service, but they also provide a secret API key for individual users to be able to build with the tool. So that's the first dimension of this. And the second dimension is the temperature, which is how open the model is to alternative outputs on a scale of 0 to 2. Once you go beyond 1.2, it mostly generates nonsense. It breaks down. And so that's a way of revealing or kind of surfacing some of those technical layers of the infrastructure. Take a moment. And okay, so the system message there, those are the root instructions that tell the model how to act, how to behave. In the reference text, this could be your course syllabus. This could be related to a quiz or a test that that's coming up in your class and one that you want to help prepare your students for. So now I want to we're doing a little bit of Jeopardy. This is probably going to go a little too fast, but stick with me. So when I generated this was CUNY by the Boroughs Bronx Ed Tech edition. Bronx Community College, founded in 1957 as part of CUNY and sits near the Bronx Zoo. This is a bad clue. This is a really bad clue. The answer is in the clue itself. You'd never see that on Jeopardy, but this reveals how naive these models can be and how little understanding they have of the task because they are technical infrastructure in a similar way as what Luke was talking about with respect to normal technology. It is not a radical break, but rather something that can be situated within existing digital infrastructure. I see a hand there in the back.
Just as somebody who's lived, his family's been in the Bronx since the 1840s, define near the Bronx Zoo.
Yeah.
Exactly. So ambiguity, right? The question has been, the clue has been corrupted. There's ambiguity. A lot of the time, you'll also see confabulation or hallucination. But this is part of the tool. The tool is not meant to produce 100% accurate stylistic clues. I'm not looking to supplant Jeopardy clue writers. I'm looking to make to develop infrastructure for us to be able to critically read AI in context. I missed the second one. The second one was okay, right? Yeah.
Even New York.
Yeah, it was CUNY by the Boroughs Bronx Ed Tech edition. And so you can see there's like higher ed heroes, New York State of Mind. I think it was just CUNY by the Boroughs, but I made sure to include the Bronx as part of the category. So it generates the categories, it generates the clues, it generates the answers, and you can use a select few AI providers, and that includes you can use OpenAI, you can use DeepSeek, you can use I've been trying to build Claude into it as well as some other API providers. And it is available. I think the link is missing, but that'll be at the end of the presentation. And so I'm gonna wrap up here in a minute, but Damn lines get justified. So some other prototypes we're working on. I'm as part of the tinkering and research and development arm of the Cali Institute. I'm also looking into research tools that can help solve. I mean, not necessarily solve, but aid researchers, archivists, and historians in parsing mixed media historical documents in a way that actually supports existing research practices at CUNY and beyond. And this uses Mistral AI, one of the models that Mistral AI, which is a French AI company, they have Mistral OCR Latest, which is a tool for complex document understanding. And so that's built in to the tool. It's a layer of the tool, but it isn't the entire tool because it also requires pre-processing and post-processing and data handling throughout. So, and then there's also an interactive web game if you ever wanted to learn Terminal or command line, but you're a little too intimidated to get started. This is a game-based opportunity to do so, and it's AI free. So if you're ever interested, you can work with that. And all of these were to an extent generated with code generating LLMs, but there's always, in my mind, a kind of critical negotiation of the technical constraints and affordances of the technology. Where it bottlenecks, those are critical insights that we can bring to the Institute to inform the way that we approach curriculum and pedagogy. So next steps would be introducing Cali participants to R&D projects, as well as the AI tooling and development process as a heuristic for building critical AI literacy that supports our students, that empowers instructors, and that helps situate the technology within infrastructure. And on that point, we're also attempting to, through this process, build institutional capacity for CUNY-hosted AI infrastructure apart from the proprietary providers that we're also familiar with. And that might seem like a far-flung possibility with the current moment we're in, but generating or trying to produce these speculative infrastructures is, I think, an imperative of our time. Because if we, as stakeholders within the university, don't do that, then it risks arriving by force. And with that, I will conclude. And these are some resources. Luke will conclude.
So just wrapping up very quickly, we can take a couple of questions, but if you go to this URL, you'll go to the Critical AI Literacy Institute. This is just like the tip of the iceberg of the conversations and reading and thinking and tinkering that we've been doing. There is a group, I believe it's linked from that.
This QR code goes to the
This is
slides. So you get all these links.
This is the website. We'll add a link that's not there now for a group on the CUNY Academic Commons that you can join. We send out, weekly digests of what we're reading, announcements of events around CUNY related to this kind of work. And one of the kind of requirements of the grant before we even applied was that we wanted to do this over 3 years. That these single-year projects are really great for generating models, but then they lose the resources to reflect upon their implementation and their implications. So having 3 years to think about this as this technology evolves within our space and as we adopt is going to be really crucial, and we welcome participation from every corner of the university. So thanks to my teammates here, and we can take a couple questions if you have them. Yeah.
What are the faculty metrics that it's looking into to get the faculty hiring?
We can talk about that in another setting. We were looking for faculty who mostly we're looking for criticality. Do you have a critical perspective from which you're approaching this, right? And do you have leadership experience and positioning within your campus to be able to amplify the work that's happening? Other questions?